Good evening to everybody. And today topic is marriage under Muslim law. And this is the family law too, Muslim law, which is a first year, second semester course. Under the caption marriage, we'll study the introduction, definition, nature and the concept of marriage, legal aspect, social aspect, religious aspect, essential of a valid marriage, effect of a marriage, kinds of marriage, restitution of conjugal rights, etc. Let us see what is the introduction. In the pre-Islamic Arabia, the laws are favorable towards the males and discriminatory against the women. Polygamy had to be accounted for in a very few blood relationship like marriage with one's real mother or sister. Marriages were of the different kinds and divorce was simple and easy for the man. With absolute right vested in man and no checks led to men denying the women their basic rights. Islam brought with it a due status for a woman and regarded them as a dignified members of the society. Nikah, Nikah. Nikah literally means to tie up together and referred the Islamic marriage. So marriage is said to be nikah under Muslim law. It is a matrimonial contract as well as an institution that gives the woman a particular and high status in the society. Nikah was to ensure the stability in a married life as it bound both the partners together for an indefinite period and also required the woman to be honored with the mahar. Mahar in the sense dower. Islam allows limited polygamy, that is, 4 wives at a time. This was allowed as during the numerous wars during the Prophet's time in Arabia. Many Muslim men lost their lives. Thus, the women outnumbered the men. The war widows and orphans became destitute as they had no standing in the society and lead miserable lives. In order to prevent injustice, Quran allows limited polygamy through the following ayat. Marry of the women who seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4. If you fear that you can't do justice, so many, then one. I repeat, Quran allows limited polygamy through the following ayat. Marry of the women who seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4. If you fear that you cannot do justice to so many, then one. Justice refers to the equal love and affection as well as the boarding and lodging. The Quran has another ayat that you will not be able to deal equally between your wives however much you wish to do so. Thus, it can be safely inferred that though the Islam permits 4 wives at a time, it is actually in favor of monogamy. The Mutazila Muslims follow monogamy strictly, but Muslims all over the globe follow the traditions of the Prophet and practice polygamy. As per the statistics, Indian Muslims seems to prefer monogamy, though they are allowed to have 4 wives as per the law. Though allowed to have the 4 wives as per the law. The Muslim government servant, I repeat, the Muslim government servants requires the government's permission before contracting the second marriage. Muslim countries like Turkey and Tunisia have laws for the monogamy. Pakistan has discouraged polygamy by implementing the laws that make it difficult to marry 2 or more at a time. Then we'll see the definition. Hidayah says that marriage implies a particular contract used for the purpose of legalizing children. Justice Mahmood has defined the Muslim marriage as purely a civil contract. Ashabah says marriage is a contract underlying a permanent relationship based on mutual consent on the part of a man and a woman. In Shoharat Singh versus Jafri Begum, the Privy Council said that nikah, marriage, under the Muslim law is a religious ceremony. Let we see now the nature and concept of marriage. The object of a Muslim marriage is to legalize children and to a large extent to regulate and validate the sexual relations. Apart from being a civil contract, it is also a social and a religious institution. Let us see the legal aspect. Legally speaking, a Muslim marriage is a contract, but it has a few elements of contract. The parties have to be competent and offer acceptance and free consent form an important part. Within a limit, the parties can decide the terms of the marriage, and in case of breach, there are provisions for the rights and obligations of the parties. It can be safely said the marriage is a very similar to a contract. Let me see the social aspect. Marriage is a social institution and a social method to give an equal status to women. The dower, here meher, which is an essential for a Muslim marriage, provides a security net for the woman in case of need. Limited polygamy helps raise the woman's standing and dignity in the society. By placing the prohibitions on the marriage, the relationship of family can be regulated and the ill effects of inbreeding are avoided. Let me see the religious aspect now. Marriage is the tradition of the Prophet as well as the present in the words of Quran. Thus, a person who marries get religious benefits and abstainer would have committed a sin. In Anis Begum versus Muhammad Istafa, it has been held to be a religious sacrament. So, we have seen the legal aspect, social aspect, and religious aspect also regarding the marriage in Muslim law. Now we'll see the essential of a valid marriage. When you say the essential of a marriage, there number one, competence of the parties. Number two, free consent of the parties. Number three, formalities in the marriage. Number four, absence of prohibition. These are the main four elements for the valid marriage under Muslim law. A marriage is a valid marriage or sahihi only if it is recognized by the courts to be lawful. Number one, we will see it. Competence of the parties. That is, in competence of the parties, we will see the age of puberty. For marriage, dower and divorce, the age of majority under the Muslim law is age of puberty and not 18 years of age. I repeat, for marriage, dower and divorce, the age of majority under the Muslim law is the age of puberty and not the 18 years of age. Though Hidayah says the minimum age of puberty for a boy is 12 years and for girl it is 9 years. It has been fixed at 15 years of age by the Privy Council in the year 1916. Thus, a boy or a girl of 15 years of age will be presumed to have attained the age of puberty unless the contrary is proved. Minors marriage. Under the Muslim law, a person under the 15 years of age is presumed to be minor and has no capacity to give the consent for marriage. Unless and until the guardian's consent is not obtained, the marriage will be void. Guardians for the marriage are different from guardians appointed by the court. The order of the priority is as follows. Number one, father. Number two, paternal grandfather, however high. Third, brother or the male members of the father's family. Fourth, mother. And the fifth is maternal uncle, aunt, and other maternal relatives. A remoter of guardian for the marriage cannot get the minors married off without actually following the prescribed order, and such marriage will be void. Shia says that only the father of or paternal grandfather, however high, can be the guardian for marriage. The Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929 provides that a child marriage exists and will be valid, but the guardian and other who conduct it can be punished. A child marriage can be prevented by an injunction. Then we will see what is the option of puberty. That is Khairul Bulugh. Under a Muslim marriage, a minor attaining the age of puberty can exercise the option of puberty, wherein the minor can approve or disapprove the marriage. Contract by the guardian who is not the father or the grandfather. If he disapproves, the marriage will be dissolved with immediate effect. If the minor says nothing, it will be presumed that he has approved the marriage. As per the Shia law, a minor has to approve his marriage upon attaining the age of puberty. If the father or the grandfather has contracted a marriage fraudulently or negligently, the minor can repudiate the marriage on attaining the age of puberty. A wife can exercise the right even if the marriage was contracted by her father or her grandfather. There can be no unreasonable delay in the exercise of the option of puberty. The husband will lose his right to the option of puberty if the marriage has been consummated. The wife will also lose her right unless the consummation has taken place when the wife was still a minor and against her consent. B. Soundness of mind. Lunatics can get married during the lucid intervals for they can understand the consequences. Idiots, on the other hand, cannot do so. Idiocy, idiocy refers to an abnormal state of the mind wherein the person can't understand the consequences of their actions. Marriage of insane persons. A person can contract a lawful marriage through a guardian on receiving a reason that the said person can repudiate the marriage. Next, religion of the parties. The parties can marry any Muslim irrespective of the sex or subsex. Interreligion marriages. Under Sunni law, a male can marry a Muslim girl of any sect or subsect, or even a Kitabiya girl. Kitabiya female is one who belongs to a community that originated in a book revealed by the heavens. Kitabiya in the sense who believes in the holy scriptures. Those are called Kitabiyas. Thus, the Jews and the Christians can be wed to Sunni male. A marriage with a non-Muslim or a non-Kitabiya female, the marriage is nearly irregular. Under Shia law, a marriage with a non-Muslim or a Kitabiya woman is not permitted. However, a muta marriage may be contracted with a Kitabiya or Parsi female. Marriage of Muslim female with non-Muslim male. Then we see a Muslim female has no right to contract a marriage with a non-Muslim, even if he is a Kitabiya or Parsi. I repeat, a Muslim female has no right to contract a marriage with a non-Muslim, even if he is a Kitabiya or a Parsi. Such a marriage will be void. Then the Special Marriage Act 1954 allows as a man or woman to get married to each other whether a Muslim or a non-Muslim. The succession will be governed under the Indian Succession Act 1925. The second element is free consent of the parties. If the parties are sane and adults, they can give consent on their own and the marriage will be a valid one. If the parties are one of them is either a minor or insane, the consent has to be obtained by the guardian. The consent will be deemed free when it is made at will and given voluntarily, and not under any coercion or fraud. Coercion is when the party is made to consent under the threat of harm to self or a loved one. All sects and schools render a marriage under the coercion to be void. The Hanafi school is the only exception. It is believed in the school that three things can't be undone even if committed as a joke. The three things are marriage, divorce, and taking back. Fraud refers to a dishonest concealment of the facts or presentation of false facts or statements to obtain consent. The moment the party whose consent was obtained by fraud comes to know of such fraud, he or she may accept the marriage as a legal one or altogether reject it. Mistake of fact is when the parties agree but not on the same thing. Consent refers to the meeting of the minds on the same issue, where the identity of the bride to be, for example, is mistaken, the marriage will be void. The third element, formalities in the marriage. What are the formalities should be followed in the marriage? Let us see. Under Muslim law, religious ceremonies are not essential for validating a marriage. The only essential formalities are that of offer and acceptance. Offer and acceptance. Offer or ijab signifies the willingness of the party to contract marriage with another. The offer comes in form of a declaration from the boy or his guardian. This offer has to be accepted by the girl or her guardian. This is referred to as a acceptance or a qubul. Though no specific form exists, the word must show the unequivocal intention of the parties or the guardians to marry the parties. It may be oral or written. When written down, it is referred to as the Kabinama. I repeat, if it is written down, it is referred to as the Kabinama. It is essential that the offer and acceptance occur at the same sitting. Thus, simultaneous action must come a joint whole. For example, the groom to be has to send the offer through another, the bride must accept it in presence of others, and then the marriage will be a valid one. Reciprocity is another important aspect. The acceptance has to be for the proposal word to word. It is as it is and without any variations. Conditional or contingent marriage is void even if the event that they are made dependent upon does in fact occur. Presence of witnesses is not essential under the Shia law. Under the Sunni law, the offer and acceptance needs to be to two competent witnesses. A Muslim male who is of a sound mind and has attained the age of puberty is a competent single witness. Two sane Muslim female who have reached the age of puberty can also be treated as competent witnesses. Thus, two Muslim women along with a competent Muslim male witnesses will be regarded as the competent witnesses for the marriage. Four female will not be regarded as the competent witnesses. The term witnesses does not refer to anyone specifically asked or invited for this purpose only. A registration under the Muslim law is not essential for the validity of the marriage, but certain enactments provide for the registration in the matter of marriage as well as divorces. The act, the acts do so because then there exists as a proof of the marriage, but even then the registration is optional only and not mandatory. It has also been held in a few cases that if the community custom requires a registration, if even if it is in a different format, the marriage has to be registered then. Under the Indian Christian Marriage, under the Indian Christian Marriage Act 1872, the registration of marriage will be essential if the marriage is between a Muslim and a Christian. Then the fourth element, absence of the prohibition. Prohibition refers to the impediments or the restriction placed on a person with respect to another person or an action. The Muslim law provides that the marriage should not be a marriage against the Islam or have any other impediment to it. Absence of the prohibition refers to the freedom to marry a person for they don't stand in a particular relationship to each other. For example, a father cannot marry his own daughter. Prohibited degree is there. Absolute prohibitions. When you say absolute prohibitions for the marriage, they are mandatory and have to be followed or else the marriage will be void. If a person is within the prohibited relationship of the other party, the marriage can't take place. Whether a person is within the prohibited relationship or not can be decided on the following basis. Number A. Consanguinity is a relationship by blood. A Muslim cannot marry one's own descendants, however high, or descendant of one's father or mother, no matter however low. Similarly, brothers and sisters of one's ascendants, however so high, cannot be married to. However, there is no prohibition in the marriage of cousin brothers or sisters. B. Affinity refers to a relation by marriage. A Muslim cannot marry the ascendants or the descendants of one's spouse or the spouse of one's ascendants or descendants because it comes under the prohibited degree. Number C. Fosterage refers to the relationship of a nature and I repeat, fosterage refers to the relationship of nurture and feeding. A child is a breastfed during its infancy. If the person providing the feed is someone other than the biological mother, the infant or child will still stand in a prohibited relationship with her. So, fosterage also there is a prohibition. Relative prohibitions. We will see what is the relative prohibitions. Where the compliance is not mandatory, but non-compliance will be frowned upon. Any marriage in violation will be only irregular, not void. As per Shia law, the marriage will be either perfectly valid or void and not irregular. The Shia law only recognizes two types of marriage, either the valid marriage or void marriage. But in Shia and the Sunni law, there are three types: is valid, void, and irregular. We will see in the further online class. And number A, unlawful conjunction. A Muslim cannot have two wives at the same time if the wives are related to each other in a way that would have made their marriage void if they had been of opposite sex. As per the Sunni law, a marriage against this condition is irregular. The Shia law will treat violation as a void marriage. The only exception will be if the marriage is with the wife's consent. B. Marriage with the fifth wife. If a Muslim man has more than five wives, it is merely irregular with respect to the fifth wife. If he divorces a wife or a wife dies, the irregularity will be removed with respect to the fifth wife. C. Marriage with a non-Muslim has been discussed early on in the chapter. Yes, at that time also it is becomes void. And D. Marriage without the witnesses is irregular as per Sunni law. Okay, D. Marriage during iddat is irregular as per the Sunni law and void as per the Shia law. Here, iddat refers to the period that a woman undergoes after divorce or the death of her husband. It literally means counting. This period is essential to ascertain whether the wife or widow is pregnant or not. During this time, the woman leads a simple and chaste life. The circumstances where she has to observe iddat and how are as follows. And when it follows, number one, dissolution of marriage by divorce. If the marriage was a valid one and consummated, the duration of iddat is 3 months only, 3 monthly courses. The marriage could have been dissolved through the talaq, ila, zihar, and under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939. If the woman is pregnant, the period of iddat extends till the delivery or the abortion of the fetus. If the marriage has not been consummated, the woman is not required to observe iddat. Number two, divorce of marriage by the death of the husband. If the marriage was a valid one, the period of iddat extends up to the 4 months and 10 days, irrespective of the fact whether the marriage was consummated or not. If the woman was pregnant at the time, the period of iddat is on the delivery or the abortion or the earlier specified period, whichever is longer. 3. Death if the husband during divorce iddat. If the husband dies during the divorce iddat, the wife has to start fresh iddat of 4 months, 10 days from the date of death of the husband. I repeat, if the husband dies during the divorce of iddat, the wife has to start a fresh iddat of 4 months and 10 days from the date of the death of the husband. 4. Commencement of iddat, when it is commenced. The period of iddat starts from the date of divorce or the death, not from the date of the wife's receiving a notice of the same. Thus, if the wife gets a notice of such an event after the specified period of iddat has expired, she does not have to observe the iddat. Under Shia law, iddat needs to be observed if the wife is past the childbearing age, if she has not even attained puberty. Valid retirement refers to when a couple spends time together in a private and there is no moral, social, or legal restrictions in their intercourse. As per Sunni law, a valid retirement raises the presumption of a consummation of the marriage. Thus, iddat will have to be observed even if there was no actual consummation, but a valid retirement has to be proved. Shia law does not recognize the concept of the valid retirement. Only Sunni law will recognize the valid retirement, but Shia law will not recognize the valid retirement. Now, husband is prohibited from the remarrying during the iddat, if and only if he already has 4 wives. Thus, he can't marry another woman till the iddat period is over. In case such a marriage does take place, it will be merely irregular and not void marriage. Miscellaneous provisions we will see. A marriage during the pilgrimage is void as per the Shia law only. B. Rule of equality refers to the society's prohibition on marriage, wherein the husband and wife must be of the same standing and equal. Therefore, the marriage is violation of the rule can be invalidated by the Qazi. The Shia law does not recognize this rule. C. Remarriage between the divorced couple is allowed provided a procedure is followed. The divorced wife has to marry another man, fulfilling all the requisites of a married marriage. The marriage has to be consummated. Then the present husband has to divorce her voluntarily, and the wife has to observe iddat. Then she may marry her first or former husband. If the procedure is not followed, the marriage will be merely irregular. D. Polyandry is not permitted, and the second marriage will be void under the Shia and Sunni law. Now we'll see what are the effects of marriage. Once the marriage between both the parties is over, their lawful obligations that may arise. They are the mutual intercourse between the both parties is legalized. Also, a child that is born is illegitimate. Furthermore, a wife has the power to meher and is entitled to maintenance. For valid reasons only, the husband can prohibit the movement of a wife. Also, after a divorce or death of the husband, the wife needs to complete the period of death. She can't marry anyone during this period. Let us see the kinds of marriage now. Valid marriage or Sahih marriage. Under all schools of Muslim law, the basic requirement have to be fulfilled. That is, the parties are competent, the consent of the parties is free, consent, and the offer and acceptance has been duly made. Legal effect of a valid marriage. The cohabitation of the parties became lawful and not immoral. The children born to lawfully wedded couple are legitimate and can inherit accordingly. For the couple itself, mutual rights of inheritance arises. The wife can claim the dower and has a right to maintenance, and simultaneously the obligations observed the iddat is becoming upon her. Prohibited relations are created due to the marriage. The legal identity of status of a Muslim woman does not blend in with her husband's identity after marriage. And the last one is the parties have the right to regulate the movements of each other, but they cannot refrain from each other from maintaining a relationship with their respective families or visit to them. Void marriage, or we can say the batil marriage. It is an illegal union that exists not in law. I repeat, it is an illegal union that exists not in law. Thus, a marriage in violation of a absolute prohibition or polyandry is a void marriage. Shia law provides a few additional grounds like marriage during the pilgrimage or marriage with non-Muslim or women observing iddat. Let us see the legal effect of a the void marriage. Legal effect of a void marriage. No mutual rights or obligations are created for the parties in this union. The children born to such couple are deemed illegitimate, and the wife has no rights to dower or maintenance. The parties can actually marry anyone they wish, for this marriage does not exist in law or in fact. Now the irregular marriage or fasid marriage. An incomplete marriage where the deviation from the procedure or a flaw can be removed, it is called an irregular marriage. For example, the marriage with the fifth wife or with a woman observing iddat will be treated as an irregular marriage. And how it can be becomes regular when any one of the wife is died among five, then the irregular marriage become a regular marriage. That is the removal of the irregular marriage. Legal effects of an irregular marriage. The cohabitation is lawful and the children are legitimate and can inherit the properties of their parents. Mutual rights of the inheritance don't arise. After the consummation only can the wife claim dower. The wife does not have to observe if the marriage is not consummated. Let us see the temporary marriage or muta marriages. It is only observed in the Shia law. It is not observed or recognized in the Sunni law. It is a unique form of marriage recognized only under the Itna Sharia school, that is a Sunni Shia school. It is a union for a particular time only with the consideration as a prerequisite. The roots can be traced back to the early Arabia, where men had to travel long and far. To confer legitimacy on the offspring produced during the travels, the Prophet allowed this muta or enjoyment marriage for some time. Later, he prohibited it absolutely. It is essential that the parties must be competent to contract marriage because the guardian can't contract for a muta marriage. The Muslim male can contract muta marriage with a Muslim. Kitabiya or Parsi women, but the Muslim woman cannot contract the same only with the Muslim man. Any number of muta wives can be contracted with. The formalities of the free consent, offer and acceptance as well as the absence of the prohibition have to be followed. The dower must be specified at the time of the marriage, otherwise the marriage will be deemed void. The duration of the muta marriage must be specified or else it will be deemed as a permanent marriage. What is the legal effect of a temporary marriage? The cohabitation between the parties becomes lawful and consequently even the children are legitimate children. There will be no mutual rights of the inheritance between the husband and wife. The husband has to pay the whole dower amount if he leaves without finishing the duration of the marriage. If the wife were to leave before the expiry of the specified time, the husband can deduct a proportionate amount from her dower. Maintenance is not available to the wives as a right. There is no divorce in muta marriages. It ends on the prescribed time or departure of one of the parties. Iddat has to be observed for 2 months if the marriage has been consummated, else it is not needed. If the marriage dissolved due to death, 4 months and 10 days is the iddat period. That is the followed in the muta marriage are concerned. Marriage agreement are allowed under the Muslim law. Even subsequent to the marriage, a couple can enter into agreement for regulation of their relationship. If the guardian have made such an agreement, when the parties are not competent to do so, the agreement will be a binding on them. Any agreement working against Islam is void. For example, a marriage agreement wherein the wife is not allowed to claim her dower or the couple can stay separately without any reasonable cause would be illegal. Marriage agreements are binding on the parties so long as they are legal. For example, an agreement wherein the husband can't contract another marriage during the subsistence of the first is a valid agreement. Similarly, an agreement stating that the husband shall not stop the wife from receiving her relatives at his house at any time is also valid. Breach of a marriage agreement, if the agreement was a valid one, give rise to rights of the refusal for restitution. Dower related rights and in extreme scenarios, dissolution of the marriage. Restitution of conjugal rights. Let us see what is the restitution of conjugal rights. Restitution of, let me, yes, comes to the restitution of the conjugal rights. Restitution of conjugal rights refers to a giving back a right to one party to stay with the spouse. As a couple is entitled to stay together and enjoy each other's company. If one spouse stays away without reason, the other can file a suit to move back with the agreed party. The courts have to look into the circumstances of each case and then decide. A wife can claim defenses against her husband's claim as given below. A. He falsely accused her of adultery. B. Her prompt dower was not paid on demand. C. The husband has been expelled from the caste. D. Cruelty, physical or emotional, by the husband. And C. Husband converted from Islam to another religion or used objectionable words against the Prophet, etc. Dissolution of Marriage Act 1939 has widened the defenses even more. And with this, and today online class comes to an end. Let me stop. Goodbye.